Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for joining us. We wanted to give an update on some significant arrests that we made today regarding an aggravated assault that happened on April 23rd. As you may or may not know, April 23rd of this year, in the 11,000 block of Lavernia Road, we were called out that morning for a report of an injured person. When deputies arrived, patrol deputies initially arrived, they found a young man who was later identified as 24-year-old Joshua Sandoval, tied up, mostly nude, and suffering from just severe injuries is what we knew that day. Since that time, we've come to find out that he was actually suffering from several gunshot wounds. However, he was alive and remains alive to this point, although substantially injured as a result of this aggravated assault. In the days that followed, I can tell you that what I witnessed firsthand was just some inspirational police work on the part of our TAG deputies, our homicide deputies, people from the SCORE unit, K9 unit, a bunch of units working together to try to bring the suspects in this case into custody. We had to, of course, identify them all based upon the information as it developed. So they were able to set up surveillance on a location where we know now that the majority of this assault occurred. It was a trailer park on Shady Meadows, which is actually located in Guadalupe County, although the location where Mr. Sandoval was found is actually in Bexar County. The majority of the assault was at least began in Guadalupe County. But over the course of the next several days after this assault, just through some great police work on the part of our deputies working together, they were able to make a couple of identifications of some possible suspects. A couple of days after the initial assault, we were actually able to get Daryl King, 36 years of age, into custody at a home on Bridge Crossing, which is located in Cibolo, Texas. We did so with the assistance of Guadalupe County deputies as well as Cibolo Police Department, officers from the Cibolo Police Department. He was placed under arrest that night, and King was found to be in possession of a handgun, a high caliber handgun. He was on parole at the time, or is on parole, and he was found to be in possession of that weapon. He was placed under arrest for possession of that weapon, which is a violation of his parole, where he remained in custody in Guadalupe County. Yesterday, we were also able to, thanks to some information that we were able to develop about another suspect in the case, 24-year-old Uriah Hoffman. He was actually found yesterday by TAG deputies at a homeless encampment near Nacogdoches and O'Connor. Now, through the course of the investigation, what we were able to find is that on April 22nd, the night before Mr. Sandoval was found, Uriah Huffman and the victim in this case had been involved in a disturbance which turned violent. During the course of this violent encounter, one of the suspects reported that Sandoval actually struck him in the face with a guitar. That suspect Huffman then left the location, contacted Daryl King and told him about the fight that had occurred where he'd been struck with a guitar. Between the two of them, then they came in, they assaulted the suspect, Joshua Sandoval, with the handgun. King pistol whipped him with that handgun, as a matter of fact. Between the two of them, they quickly overpowered Sandoval. They tied him up with rope and with some zip ties that were there on the scene. They then used a knife to cut his clothes off of his body. That, at this point, we can only surmise that was done in an attempt to humiliate and terrorize the victim. He was then thrown into the trunk of his own car, and he was transported from Guadalupe County to the location on Lavernia Road where he was eventually found. Once there at that location, the suspects, at least one of the suspects, shot the victim several times in the head. And it's a miracle that the young man survived. At this point, what we can tell you about his injuries is that they're pretty substantial. On the day of the actual incident that he was found, he did lose an eye. That eye was surgically removed in the aftermath of the attack itself. And I mean, I can't even imagine what this young man went through and what we can, from the best we can figure, he was laying out there for about 5 or 6 hours, tied up, shot, bleeding profusely, and just basically waiting to die where they had left him. Can't even imagine what this young man went through to this point. However, one of our detectives was able to communicate with Mr. Sandoval yesterday in the hospital. And although the young man is mostly nonverbal, obviously through his the extent of his injuries and some sedation that he's under, he was able to convey to our detective that he just really wanted us to catch the people responsible for this. So we did our best to assure him that that would happen, and at this point, that has happened. Last night, after we were able to take Uriah Huffman into custody, he was a warrant was walked and he was booked. And then earlier today, we obtained warrants for Daryl King, which, as I mentioned, he's still in custody in Guadalupe County, but he'll be booked for those additional charges as well once he's extradited back to Bexar County. Esta tarde nosotros vamos a dar más información tocante un intento de homicidio que ocurrió el día 23 de abril en 11,000 Lavernia Road en el condado de Bexar. Se encontró una víctima, un hombre de 24 años de edad, Javier Salazar. Fue encontrado allí en un camino que está por el campo, y él fue encontrado, estaba amarrado con mecate y con zip ties, esposas de plástico, que él fue encontrado. En esos momentos no sabíamos qué tan herido él estaba. Supimos que las heridas de él eran serias, pero ya se sabe que esas heridas son varios balazos que él sufrió a las manos de estos sospechosos. Se aparenta que la noche anterior la víctima fue involucrada en un argumento que escaló hasta el punto que él y uno de los sospechosos, Uriah Huffman, 24 años de edad, ellos empezaron a pelear. Se aparenta que la víctima le pegó al sospechoso en la cara con una guitarra. El sospechoso se juntó con el otro sospechoso, Daryl King, 36 años de edad. Entre los dos hombres asaltaron a la víctima, lo amarraron y le cortaron toda la ropa. Lo echaron en la cajuela del carro de la víctima. La víctima fue llevada del condado de Guadalupe hasta el condado de Bexar, en la calle Lavernia, donde lo asaltaron, lo sacaron del carro y le dieron varios balazos en la cabeza. Afortunadamente, la víctima sobrevivió sus heridas. Hasta estos momentos sobrevive esas heridas. Y él está todavía en el hospital en San José, donde todavía está en condiciones críticas, pero va mejorándose con cada día. Ayer una de nuestras oficiales tuvo éxito en hablar con la víctima. No pudo hablar con palabras, sino que haciéndole señales a la detectiva. Le quiso dar a saber que él nomás quería que nosotros arrestáramos a las personas responsables. Ayer nosotros tuvimos éxito en encontrar a Uriah Huffman, 24 años de edad, en un campo de personas sin hogar cerca de Nacogdoches y O'Connor Road. Él se enfrentó con ese cargo de secuestro con agravantes, y nosotros ya hace unos cuantos días habíamos arrestado a Daryl King en la ciudad de Cibolo, en una calle que se llama Bridge Crossing. En esos momentos, el martes pasado, el día 26, nosotros arrestamos a Daryl King. Él estaba armado con una pistola, y ahorita tenemos evidencia que esa pistola la que pescamos en la posesión de King es posible que es la pistola que ellos usaron para balacear la víctima en este caso. De cualquier manera, la víctima sigue en condiciones críticas, y en estos momentos estos dos sospechosos se enfrentan con esos cargos violentos. Any questions?
Hey, Sheriff, real quick. You said that the victim, Sandoval, was actually with Huffman the night before he was assaulted, and he had hit Huffman with a guitar. Do you know? Yes, sir. My
understanding is that they had been involved in a social setting at that location on Shady Meadows Lane in Guadalupe County. Some sort of an argument ensued between Huffman and Sandoval. That argument turned violent pretty quickly. It was just between those two. My understanding is that Huffman then left the residence, grabbed a hold of Daryl King, told him what had happened. And so then between the two of them, they re-entered the residence and assaulted the suspect at that point, or the victim at that point. Any other questions on the aggravated kidnapping case? There are still persons of interest in the case. At this point, I'm not at liberty to discuss those names. However, we would ask anybody with information to shed on this case, or if they suspect they may be one of these persons of interest, we would rather that they find us before we find them. And we would ask them to give us a call at 210-335-GANG, 210-335-GANG, and we'd love to talk to them and hear whatever it is that they might have to shed on this case by way of information. Any other questions on the aggravated kidnapping case?
One more, Sheriff. We saw in an affidavit that Sandoval's mother had said that he came home and his car was missing without his car. His brother then found the car and returned it home. Sandoval, the victim, then saying, "You don't understand how much trouble you just got me into." Any idea what that might have been about? Is he involved with these people through some drugs or something like that?
Well, I think that they were all involved in the drug trade to some extent. Certainly, we've said it before, that when you engage in a high-risk lifestyle like the drug trade, either as a client or a buyer, unfortunately, or as a seller or a buyer, unfortunately, you're dramatically increasing your chances of becoming a victim of violent crime. Now, that's not to say that this victim bore any responsibility in what ultimately happened to him. But I can tell you through these associations, my understanding is that at some point, these suspects came to be in possession of his car that was given to him by a family member. He and another family member went and retrieved that car back from the suspects. And then it's at that point that the suspects, it would appear, at least in the estimation of the victim, that initially what he told his mom is that he felt that he was going to be in trouble for having gone back and retrieved his vehicle from these people. That may or may not be what's at the root of this assault, aggravated assault, as it were. So that's still part of the ongoing investigation as it continues. I mean, I can tell you this, that regardless of what transpired between the victim and the suspects in this case, clearly, I mean, from very early on, we were pretty disturbed by this this turn of events and what they did to this young man. I can tell you nothing he did came anywhere near deserving the sort of treatment that he did, to be terrorized, assaulted, tied up, shot in the back of the head 3 times, and then left on the road to die like some animal. It just shows me the total lack of regard for human life that these 2 suspects seem to have. And they're certainly dangerous people that we're happy to get off the streets. So again, kudos to all my deputies that got these folks into custody with the help of those outside agencies. I know that Guadalupe County helped us out. Seminole Police Department, Schertz Police Department helped us out. And of course, DPS covert folks were also helping us out. So we really, really appreciate everybody helping us out with that. Any other questions?
Ken Spivey was asking, are we expecting to see any more arrests?
Ken Spivey had a question on whether we're expecting to see any more arrests. We do have other persons of interest in the case. At this point, nobody that I would call a suspect. So I'm not at liberty to give their name, but it would not surprise me to see that other people were involved either before or having knowledge after the fact of what had occurred. So again, if anybody's out there and feels like they might have some information they'd like to share before they become suspects, we'd like to hear from them. The number is 210-335-GANG. I've got one other case of note to share on an arrest that was just made a little while ago. This is an arrest of a former Bexar County deputy. You may recall that last year, February 7th of 2021 to be exact, we became aware of some allegations of an assault that occurred, that were said to have occurred here in our South Tower at the hands of a deputy by the name of Victor Collins. My apologies. Victor Collins, 26 years of age. At that time, we did walk a warrant. Our public integrity folks did walk a warrant on Victor Collins, and he was taken into custody right here at the South Tower by myself and some SWOR deputies that were here. We actually took him into custody. Well, Mr. Collins was in the aftermath of the actual initial arrest, he went through the disciplinary proceedings, and on May 7th of last year of 2021, he was formally dismissed from the agency. And so he has, ever since that point, been a former deputy from the sheriff's office. Yesterday, we were told that a grand jury indicted Mr. Collins on several charges. We made an attempt to pick him up at his residence last night, and were unsuccessful in doing that. However, earlier today, some deputies from our TAG unit, our organized crime group, were able to locate Mr. Collins in the 3300 block of Timber View. And he was placed under arrest at 3:42 p.m. and he's on his way down to South Tower right now to be booked for those charges. I don't have the exact charges in front of me at this point. I can tell you official oppression and assaultive type offenses, but we will have to get them to you. And I believe there's also a tampering with evidence charge. But John, you'll have to get you all the exact nature of the charges. However, we are happy to report that unfortunately, he is in custody at this point, and he was able to be taken into custody, again, due to some great detective work on the part of our TAG deputies, and he was taken into custody safely without incident. Esta tarde nosotros vamos a dar más información tocante un ex oficial que ya no trabaja en el departamento del sheriff, pero esto se aparenta que en febrero del 2021 el sospechoso estaba trabajando como oficial en este departamento cuando se aparenta que él asaltó a un reo dentro de la cárcel. Nosotros sacamos una orden por su arresto del sospechoso el año pasado, y nosotros lo arrestamos aquí en nuestra cárcel cuando él estaba fue libre del trabajo. El día 7 de mayo 2021 le dimos la despedida a ese oficial. Yo le di la despedida a ese oficial, y pues el caso siguió siendo investigado. Ayer nosotros nos dimos cuenta que el sospechoso, a causa de este caso, él tenía varias órdenes por su arresto. Nosotros intentamos de arrestarlo anoche, pero no tuvimos éxito en encontrarlo, sino que este día nuestros detectives siguieron tratando de buscar al sospechoso. Lo buscaron el 3300 Timberview en este condado, y lo arrestamos a las 3:42 de la tarde sin incidente. Él ahora lo están llevando para la cárcel y se va a enfrentar con varios cargos a causa de este asalto contra este reo. Esto es algo que nosotros no toleramos, y pues lo tomamos en serio cuando se hagan estas alegaciones, pero nosotros también sabemos que nosotros tenemos la responsabilidad de manejar estos casos tan pronto que se pueda y hacer estos arrestos. Aunque no nos dé mucho gusto hacer estos arrestos, tenemos orgullo de poder decir que nosotros, cuando se necesita, lo hacemos. Any questions on the arrest of Mr. Collins? Okay. Well, I thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I know that was a whole lot of information, and I know that I talked fast, but I know that everybody's got other pressing matters to attend to. So if there's any follow-up questions, you can contact our public information office. Until next time, I just appreciate you all joining in. Be blessed.